Today I'd like to continue to talk about the true nature that the yogi comes to know in the practice, beginning with the true nature that is known during walking meditation. I want to mention a little bit about how walking meditation is practiced, because different yogis are doing it I've instructed different yogis to do it in different ways. So, in general, after the yogis have been practicing for some time, that is more than a week, the yogis are asked to, at the end of the sitting period, when they begin the walking period, to begin with observing just the left step and the right step. And we do this, we should do this first of all to relieve the stiffness and aches that can happen during the sitting period. Observing the left step and the right step, the yogis put their attention on the leg as a whole and observe the stepping movement, labeling it at the same time, left step, right step. And we can even do this type of walking for a week into the meditation retreat. It depends on the yogi, but it should be done until it feels familiar and stable. So especially beginning yogis are urged to do this. As I said, it can even for a week. And following the initial period of left step, right step, we can observe the step as two parts, going a bit slower, making the movement sort of rhythmic or regular, observing lifting of the foot and placing it, the upward movement and the downward movement. And then after that part feels familiar and stable, the two-part walking, the yogis go to three-part walking, moving as slowly as possible to observe three parts of the step. So the difference between the lifting, moving, and placing, these three parts, is just that there's moving is inserted between the lifting up and the putting down. So that's the only difference between lifting, placing, and lifting, moving, placing. It has to be done very slowly because the changes in between these three parts come at very close intervals. So we recommend to do that, to do this three-part walking very slowly. Or some yogis have just recently arrived and I haven't met with them yet. And those yogis should just do right step, left step during your walking period. When we do the walking meditation, and we have to place the mind on where the action is going to happen. So just to repeat that, when we do walking meditation, we put our attention on the place where the action is going to happen. And the action in the walking during the active part is on the leg or on the lower leg or even on the foot itself. We put our attention on that part, and then when the foot lifts up, we observe it, keeping our attention there from the beginning to the end. When the foot lifts up, it may feel like it gets light and goes up. It may feel like it gets heavy and goes up. It may feel that it gets stiff and goes up. It might feel like it gets tight and goes up. These are various ways that what we call true nature can be experienced during the moment of lifting. In the moving, it might feel as though it's being pulled from the front or being pushed from behind. And when the placing occurs, it may feel like it gets heavy and goes down, or it may feel like it gets light and goes down. But we try to keep our attention on these actions at the time when they happen. We also observe the standing at the ends of the path, and when we do that, we place the attention on the whole body, and which is where the standing happens. The whole body is involved in standing, so we put our attention on the whole body as opposed to just the legs. And when we do that, we might feel, for example, we might feel lightness in the upper part of the body, or the supporting quality as our legs support our weight, or we might feel heaviness. And also we have to pay attention to turning around at the end of the path. And then again, we can feel the qualities involved in that action as we put our mind on the whole body to observe it turning around. And pushing or pulling or lightness or heaviness, tightness, etc. The yogi applies effort to get the mind to the object and also aims the mind so that it connects accurately with the different objects, such as lifting or moving or placing, standing and turning. At first, when we begin our practice, the mind tends to miss the mark. But yogis shouldn't be discouraged when that happens. They should just keep on working, keeping on practicing to gain the skill. And if they do so, then they will know when they miss the object, and they'll know when the aim is accurate. And when that happens, the yogis, when the aim is accurate most of the time, then when they observe the lifting, they'll be able to stay with the action of the lifting. The mind will at least be able to stay there. Sometimes they will see the shape of the leg. And at this stage, they're not yet clearly experiencing mind and matter. But when the mindfulness or sati is present most of the time, then they will know the qualities that are present during the left step and the right step, or the lifting, the placing, lifting, moving, and placing. During the walking meditation, careful yogis come to know true nature. And careful yogis come to know true nature, and they also come to know the ways that what they experience is related as cause and effect. In the lifting movement, there are a series of moments of intention to lift the foot. And this intention is a mental quality. It takes an object, or it has an object. And that type of quality is called saramana dhamma. And the yogi sees that because of the intention to lift the foot, the lifting happens. The matter of the lifting itself, is not capable of knowing an object. And therefore it is called anaramana dhamma. That is, it is something that does not have an object. That which knows the object is called mental or nama, and that which does not know an object is called matter or rupa. And without the mind, the matter will not lift up. It will simply remain where it is. When there is the intention to lift, the foot automatically lifts up. And if there is the intention to lift up quickly, the lifting will be quick. If the intention is to lift up at a regular speed, then there will be lifting at a regular speed. If the intention is to lift up slowly, there will be slow lifting. And the body is just like a corpse. Without the intention to move, it won't move. Only when the intention to move happens will the body move. Similarly, yogis are instructed to perform actions, focusing their mind on the place where the action happens. So that, for example, when they bend the arm, they put their mind on the arm that is bending. When the yogi performs actions carefully, then she or he will come to see that there is the intention to bend the arm that is followed by the bending action. There's the intention to reach out the arm, followed by the reaching action. And it's like this for every single action, large or small. In fact, of course, as yogis come to know, there's many, many intentions followed by many, many actions. It's not just a single intention at the beginning, but there are many throughout the action. But in any case, intention precedes action, and how it happens according to the Abhidhamma is that first of all there's the mental intention to move, which is consciousness. And this intention to move causes mind-produced materiality. And in this case, it is mind-produced air element. And that's called in Pali Chetaja Vayo Dhatu. That air gives the body a push, which causes the movement. Just like the way the wind will push a branch or will push leaves around on the ground. It's the same way the intention produces a mind-produced air element, and that air pushes the body to make the movements. And when yogis practice carefully, they can see how this happens in detail. And this understanding occurs, the understanding of how, in this case, the mental intention causes the physical action. This understanding comes about through direct experience, not by reasoning. Further, the yogi can also see how mentality causes mentality. For example, before the mind that wants to wander from the object occurs, there is an initial attention to a distracting object. And when that mind that pays initial attention to a distracting object is not noted, not noticed with mindfulness, then the mind will wander. There will be a thought. But on the other hand, if that moment where the mind pays initial attention to the distracting object, if that moment is noticed and known, then there will be no stray thought. And it is similar when there's the arising of greed or anger or other types of consciousness. When there's pleasant liking, there's a pleasant feeling and then liking. If these things are not noted, if pleasant feeling is not noted, it leads to liking. And if liking is not noted, it leads to greed. If an unpleasant feeling is not noted, it leads to dislike. And dislike, if it is not noted, it leads to anger and rejection. So we can observe that when there's bodily pain, it's followed by anger. It can appear that way. So these are examples of how the yogi can come to see in their practice the causal relationship between different types of mind states. When seeing happens, there's a visual object that strikes the eye base, and at that moment there is seeing consciousness, and together with that, contact and feeling, good or bad. So these are 5 parts of the seeing experience. So when the yogi comes to see mind and matter very clearly, they understand that when there is an eye and when there is the visible object, then seeing consciousness arises. If there's no eye or no visible object, there won't be any seeing, not external seeing anyhow. And it is similar for the experiences of hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. When there's hearing, there's the ear base capable of hearing, and there's the sound wave. When the sound wave strikes the ear, hearing consciousness, together with contact, the meeting of the mind and the sense object at the ear base, and feeling pleasant, unpleasant, sometimes neutral. So it is similar with the other 3 sense experiences. The sense base, the object that strikes the sense base, and the consciousness that arises together with the contact and feeling, the consciousness that knows that object. In the case of hearing, the yogi comes to understand that when the ear is present, And when there's a sound, there will be hearing. And when either there's no ear or no sound present, then there won't be hearing consciousness. In addition, there's the mental factor of attention, or manasikara, that when there's a visible object, if the mind doesn't direct its attention to that object, there won't be any seeing happen. If there's a sound, there's sounds always going on. If we don't direct our minds to that object with the quality of attention or manasikara, there won't be any hearing going on. So that is also involved in the causal relationship. When the yogi sees the relationship of cause and effect, in the case of seeing, the yogi understands that seeing happens simply because this relationship of the causal factors producing a result. And the yogi doesn't therefore entertain any doubt about how else it might happen. There's no idea that it may happen due to other forces or other causes. The 5 factors that are involved in sense experience, that is the eye, the visible object, the seeing consciousness, contact, and feeling, they happen at the same time. But the yogi only becomes aware of one of these 5. At that time, it's not necessary to know all 5 at the same time. It's not possible. The yogi will only know one of the parts. And this is knowledge that is occurring. It's not possible for ignorance to arise at the same time knowledge is happening. So even though only one part of the total 5 that are present at that time, although only one part is known, it doesn't mean the yogi is ignorant at that moment. They are knowing. So the instruction is to put the attention on the place where the sense experience happens. Put the attention on the ear to note hearing. Put the attention on the nose to note smelling. Put the attention on the tongue to observe tasting. Put the attention at the place on the body where the touch sensation is happening. And we just note it as a whole thing, even though it's made up of these parts. Simply through applying the practice, the yogi comes to see true nature. And further, when the yogi sees the true mental nature, the true physical nature involved, they come to see, following on that, when they continue to practice, they see these causal relationships. Further, the yogi comes to know or notice that whenever there's a recognizable object, the mind arises that is engaged in noticing that object, or thinking, or reasoning, or understanding. There can also be cases where physical matter causes matter. And an example of that is when we're in a hot climate, there's hot weather, we feel the heat. It affects the body so that we feel kind of what they maybe call stuffy. We feel stuffy and we start to sweat. And in cold countries, if we're in cold weather without protective warm clothing, then people can even die of the cold. So therefore, in cold countries, people put warm clothes on and they warm themselves by the fire. So these are examples of how the external cold causes internal effects. So we can see, we can know how the body gets cold from external cold and the discomfort that happens at that time. So when the causal relationships of mind and matter become apparent to the yogi, then the yogi may also feel many different pains arising in the body. And the yogi notes one, but while they're noting it, another one arises. So they note that new pain, and while they're noticing that one, another one arises. And the yogi just keeps on noting the different pains that arise. Or there may be many mental images of, people or houses or trees or parks or a cloud. And when noting one image, another one will arise. So the yogi notes the new one, and then, while noting that one, another one arises, and so on. So that this is just something that can happen at the same time. So when it happens like this, the yogi understands that the mind arises according to each object that becomes apparent. And if there is an object, then consciousness arises. If there's no object, then consciousness does not arise. And in between noticing like this, the yogi can also understand by inference that the body and the mind continue due to causes and due to conditions such as ignorance or craving or karma and so on. And the yogi knows that everything that he or she is experiencing is simply a mental, physical process of cause and effect, and that there is no person who is bending, there is no person who is feeling pain. It is simply a stream of cause and effect. In the practice, we don't try to find anything specific. We just try to apply the mind to the arising object, beginning and sitting with the rising and the falling of the abdomen. We make the effort to observe the object. So at the beginning of the sitting, we put the attention on the abdomen because that's where the rising and falling movement happens. Sometimes there's nothing special happening in us, and so we need to have an anchor. So we initially put the attention on the abdomen and make the effort to observe the rising movement when it happens. And we use the factor of aiming so that we can get the mind to the object accurately. So these two factors have to always be employed, effort and aiming, so that the mind catches the object at the very beginning. And when it catches the mind at the very beginning, it will be able to sustain it until the end of the process. And then making the effort again to observe the falling movement right at the very beginning, aiming the mind so that it connects with the falling movement right from the beginning and is sustained on that movement until the end. So we do this, and the types of knowing that I've mentioned naturally arise, knowing the true nature, the physical qualities of heaviness or lightness, stiffness, tension, relaxation, flowing, heat, warmth, coolness. All these things are what we call physical true nature that can be known through the application of the practice if we practice systematically. Also, there's mental true nature, the mind knowing the object, the quality of contact, which is the meeting of the mind and the object at the sense base, and the quality of feeling, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neutral feeling. These are examples of true nature, mental true nature. I hope that you all will be able to apply the practice to see the true nature, see the things that really exist in your own being as they are, and through that develop Vipassana knowledge stage by stage until you realize liberation. That's all for today. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.